Hey guys, this is Coach Williamson or Coach Will, and I'm here today to talk to you through the World War II PowerPoint. Um, First and foremost, I just want to say miss you guys, my students, and hope you guys are safe. Hope you guys have been able to use a negative and turn it into a positive and somehow. I know that things that are going on in our world right now and in our homes are chaotic and nerve-wracking and worrisome. But I do believe, we can find positives at this time, and just the fact that we've been able to slow down and focus on things at home that maybe we haven't been able to focus on in a long time has been a positive for me. So. If you guys need to, please reach out. Please don't hesitate to do so. If you need help with anything, I'd be glad to. So let's go ahead and get started with World War II business, and we'll get you going as soon as we can. All right, so first, before we get into the non-aggression pact with Stalin, let's give you a little bit of background, just make sure we're caught up to speed. So Italy has become a fascist country under the direction of Benito Mussolini. Germany has been under Hitler's control for a few years now. So essentially, Hitler tries to take control in the early 1930s, fails, gets sent to prison. While he's in prison, writes this pamphlet book, whatever you want to call it, called Mein Kampf, which means my prison, and he essentially writes down his goals for making Germany the superior nation, race, what have you. Gets out of prison, and by 1935, 36 is fully in charge, and he starts moving pieces to, basically conquer the world, as we know. Japan in 1936, Japan invades China, and around that same time, well, I guess after, they also start trying to acquire islands and territories around Japan. And this was really kind of the first time Japan had kind of come into the world as a, hey, we want to be a superpower, we want to be a player here. And remember, Japan was angry after the Treaty of Versailles. They felt they got kind of a raw deal there. So they wanted to prove to people that they were more powerful than people thought they were. So we have three countries that are really, leading the charge to, take over the world, I guess is, kind of a euphemism for it. So let's talk about the non-aggression pact. So Stalin, Joseph Stalin, is the leader of the Soviet Union, okay? And Hitler, before he starts doing his really bad stuff, Hitler wants to make sure that Stalin is not in his way. So what he does is Hitler goes to Stalin and says, hey, I don't like you, you don't like me. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But if we fight each other, we're going to ruin what each other want, right? So let's agree to sign a deal that says we won't bother each other. Non-aggression pact. And essentially what that does is that buys Hitler some time. So that he doesn't have to worry about Stalin interfering with his plans. And it's going to come back up later. Okay. At the same time, so this is right around, 1936, 37, 38, right around this non-aggression pact time. A guy named Winston Churchill in Great Britain is telling anybody and everybody that will listen that this guy named Adolf Hitler in Germany is going to be terrible news for the world. He is going to start World War II, and we have to stop him. Problem was is that people in Britain kind of looked at Churchill as a nuisance at the time, and so they kind of just ignored him for the most part. And the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, who you see in this picture, he just kind of went along with what Hitler was doing. So Hitler takes Austria, takes Czechoslovakia, like literally takes them, and Hitler says, "Oh well, we just want Germany to be what it was before World War II, like before World War One. We want Germany to go back to what Germany was." And Chamberlain's like, "Oh, okay, that seems fair enough." And so what Chamberlain's doing is he is appeasing Hitler. He is giving Hitler what he wants in hopes that, well, if we give him what he wants, he won't do anything crazy. Churchill is saying, this guy's crazy. Listen, he is literally going to start another world war. And as we know, Churchill was right. So on September 1st, 1939, Hitler invades Poland. He's been planning to all along. And at that time, England and France have no choice but to declare war on Germany because um, Germany has officially broken the Treaty of Versailles, even though really they technically had earlier. So Churchill was right, Chamberlain way wrong. So in the early parts of 1939, or late parts of 1939 and the early parts of 1940, Hitler's army essentially just wrecks shop in Europe. I mean, nobody even um, contest them at all. They run through Poland in a month. They've got France, which again, France is a world power, guys. Like France is not some small, dinky country without a trained army or weapons. They take France in less than 6 months. And so by April 1940, he's marching through Western Europe, and just people are just shocked by it. And he uses blitzkrieg warfare, which is essentially a lightning style of warfare where we're going to go faster, harder, stronger than you've ever seen, and we're going to do it before you can get resupplied on your back lines or you can get reinforcements, and we're going to overwhelm you. And so they do that. They push whoever's left of the Allied army at the time between Germany and Britain back to Dunkirk. And if you watch the movie Dunkirk over the last couple years, which is really good, you'll see that story unfold where the British citizens really have to save all the soldiers who are stuck at Dunkirk. Over the next 6 months, really 6 months to a year, you're going to see the Battle of Britain unfold. The Battle of Britain is going to be essentially Hitler's Air Force versus Britain's Air Force. A few fights in the seas and on the ground as well, but most of it takes place in the air. And this is where Churchill becomes the famous leader he becomes known for. Churchill is famous for saying, we will fight on the beaches, we will fight in the streets, we will fight in the seas, we will fight in the airs, we will never surrender. And so basically, Churchill just rallies the people and inspires his people to stop Hitler. So finally, as of like 1941, mid to late 1941, Hitler is stopped. Now, they don't push Hitler back, they just basically protect their island. So Great Britain protects their island, and Hitler doesn't have Great Britain. At the same time, the United States is having to make a choice. Do we want to get in or out? They're saying we want out. So they develop a policy of isolationism, which you see at the top here, essentially saying, hey, we don't want to mess with this. We just got done with the war. We just got done with the depression. If it's all good with you guys, we'll just sit this one out. So they supply Churchill and de Gaulle and whoever the other allies were with weapons, but they do not directly ally as far as putting boots on the ground. Meanwhile, this is just kind of a visual of what I was telling you about Japan. So by 1942, so I know it's kind of blurry, but right here, when I'm circling, that's Japan. And then everything in red is what Japan was by 1942. So like over about a 6-year span, you can see Japan, the size of their empire just, massively multiplying. So the relationship between the United States and Japan, essentially, Japan and the United States were not getting along with some trade stuff. Japan knew that the United States was eventually going to, call them out for what they were doing, and probably war was going to happen. So Japan was like, well, we'll just, we'll start war before they can start it on us. And so December 7th, 1941 happens, and that's Pearl Harbor. And that's when the Japanese deliberately attacked the United States, and where FDR has to ask Congress to declare a state of war. And so he declares war on the Japanese Empire on December 7th, 1941. And at the same time, is essentially declaring war on Hitler and Mussolini as well. So here's your setup, right? You've got on the left side USA, Great Britain, Soviet Union, France, and on the right side you've got Nazi Germany, Italy, and then Japan. And so that's kind of the war as it stands in 1942. Here's some of the technology that you'll see, some of the new technology, the bombers, just the planes that are, 10 times bigger than the planes you would have seen in World War I, dropping, tons of bombs, aircraft carriers, which made island hopping possible, paratroopers, which were a huge part of the United States getting, the Allies getting an advantage in the European theater in the 43 and 44, and then sonar technology. So at the same time, as we talked about during Holocaust Remembrance Week, Hitler is also trying to eliminate people that aren't pure German. And so if you weren't Aryan, if you weren't pure Aryan, he was trying to eliminate Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, mentally ill. And, you know, at the end of the day, about 14 million people are murdered, just pure genocide. There's Rosie the Riveter. She becomes kind of a symbol of, you know, the women's role at home, or kind of a cultural symbol. The women really helped out in the United States, allowing the war effort to continue. 1943 Tehran Conference. This is Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill. They're going to meet about how to go about attacking Hitler in Japan. There's some disagreements that happen at this meeting that lead to some later beef, which is going to be more Cold War stuff. June 6, 1944, this is D-Day. This is when the United States, France, Canada, Great Britain, the Allies attack Nazi Germany on the beaches of France, through a series of attacks on the off of these boats. You can see kind of one of these here. Crazy, crazy, crazy amount of casualties, and almost an impossible mission, but it gets the job done, and allows the Allies to push Germany back. You can kind of see that here. Hitler has one last stand with the Battle of the Bulge, trying to push the Allies back, but eventually he fails. And what you're going to see in 1944 is the United States start to enter Germany, and by 1945, Germany is defeated. Mussolini is captured and executed. Hitler kills himself, and so on May 8th, 1945, you have VE Day, or Victory in Europe Day. You can see gruesome pictures of Mussolini's death. We'll skip that. All right, a little bit about the Pacific part of the war. And one last thing, I forgot to mention this. The Non-Aggression Pact, there's not a slide about it, but in 1943, Hitler goes back on his word to not fight Stalin, and Operation Barbarossa was his attack against Stalin. And so that was what a lot of people think is the reason why Hitler lost, is because he had to split his two armies up into two fronts, or split his army up into two fronts. All right, Pacific. So, sorry about that. So essentially what you need to know about the Pacific War, okay, is the island hopping, which essentially was the strategy of the United States going from island to island to island to get closer and closer to Japan, taking their, you know, Air Force bases, their resources one at a time. The Midway battle was kind of the turning point for the U.S. Iwo Jima is kind of the symbolic turning point, because you get this picture. I would say Midway is more important. Okinawa was like the last stand of the Japanese. Once the United States won this battle, it was pretty clear the United States was eventually going to win. It was just a matter of when. And so here's the end of the war, right? The end of the war is, do we keep sending wave after wave of hundreds of thousands of troops into Japan, or do we drop two atomic bombs and end it? And Harry Truman, who had just taken over for FDR, because FDR passes away, decides to drop the bombs. And we know that the rest is history, and that's kind of how the war ends. It's a huge, huge, huge ethics question in war, right? Like, was that the right thing to do or not? Because obviously it kills hundreds of thousands of innocent people, not just, you know, people fighting. So August 9th, 1945, the second bomb is dropped on Nagasaki, and on August 14th, 1945, you got final day, no more war. And there is September 2nd, there is Tojo signing the surrender. All right, guys, that's it. Hope you guys got something out of this. Take care. Be safe. Love on your family. Bye.